India being a close to 4 trillion, 4 trillion plus,
it is, yeah,
right?
326 lakh crore.
Right.
Slightly less than 4 trillion.
Slightly less than $4 trillion, right? And we know that, say, Japan is declining, which is another interesting idea because Japan, known for its innovation and technological, why is it declining? But do you think there's a difference? Because between these two countries, the biggest marker or the biggest difference in markers is GDP per capita, right? What is an individual getting out of that entire GDP share?
Absolutely.
And we are abysmally low as compared to a Japan because denominator again.
Yes,
Our denominator is bigger in
yes,
population.
Yes.
So, as far as a country's economic health is concerned, what is a better marker? Is it per capita or is it GDP?
Of course, per capita. You know, in terms of welfare, I'm not saying we are as rich or as good as Japanese. Definitely not. You know, they have reached a level and then stopped. If we stop here, we are gone.
Right.
So we have to grow. This is a necessity. A lot of people don't get this point that growing at 8, 9, 10% at this stage, you know, I can crib about monetary policy in time, keeping interest rates high and all that, worrying about inflation. Not growing at this stage will eventually we'll hit that level where we won't be able to grow. China has already hit. You know, China now 4% is becoming a normal. They grew at 10% plus for 20 years. It's a magic. No other such a large country has grown like 10, 50. There are years where they grew 15%. And you know it's not all fudging because you can see their trade, you can see the consumption. These are not
made up numbers.
They're not made up numbers. You know, international trade is not made up. They buy and sell so much. Right. So if our case is if we don't grow, it's a necessity. We should not end up being Africa.
Yeah.
See, there is no such rule that just because you have a low base, you will grow fast. In that case, Bihar should have a higher growth rate than Karnataka. That's not true. You know, Gujarat has a higher growth rate than Bihar. You know, there is no such rule. Orissa has a higher growth rate. But Bihar doesn't. You know, so that's why there is no rule that just because you have a low base, you will grow very high.
Low base as in?
You have a low level. For instance, now we are at 2,500.
Oh, right. Okay.
Just because for example, I'm scoring 35 out of 100. That doesn't mean I'll grow more. If I don't do anything, I can decline from 35 also.
Right.
So that is the whole point. So for us, I totally agree with you. I'm not saying we are doing better than Japanese. We should not be under that illusion. We are not doing better than Japanese or Chinese or
Germans people, or any of these.
Most people. Right. But then we have a scope to grow.
Right.
And the good thing is because a lot of technology is already available, using what they have done, we can grow. It's slightly easier. So if we get our act right, our journey to that level can be faster than what they've done. We have to grow. It's not a luxury. 8-9% is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Otherwise, suppose when we become old as a country, if you're still stuck at 5,000, that becomes permanent. So we want to be at 30, 40, at least $10,000-$15,000.
Per capita. 30,000-40,000 US dollars per capita.
Yeah, 30-40 is rich. Right. But at least 10,000. With our population, 30-40 may not be possible.
And right now it's 3,000.
Less than that.
2,900 the last I read.
Yeah. It's less than that. Yeah.
Right. So per capita, basically the money doesn't trickle or doesn't distribute itself properly. There is a distribution problem. And that causes...
Even the aggregate, given our population, the aggregate is not very high. But having said that, there is one benefit of aggregate. Because of population, our bargaining power in the international sphere is going to grow. For that, we don't have to go per capita. Once we, let's say, touch 10 trillion. If we touch 10 trillion, we'll be 5,000-6,000 per capita. Still very low. But the 10 trillion size, the amount of buying and selling we'll do in the international market, we'll become a very big player in a lot of products. So the country's influence in the international stage will grow.
Interesting.
Because of population. Think about Sri Lanka reaching $5,000-$6,000. They will be like whatever, 5-6. They won't become suddenly big.
They're not a very important player.
They won't become an important player. But India reaches $5,000-$6,000, which is 10 trillion. It's a very big player. You're a distinct, clear number 3.
Right.
Clear. There is a third pole. So crucial phase. Now we are at 4. Once we cross that 6, 7, 8 trillion in the next few years, if we do, then we clearly establish ourselves as a important voice in the international sphere. That is going to happen. Does that change ordinary folks' life, day-to-day life? For that you need per capita, of course. But at least you understand, right? Your ability to withstand international pressure. Even now, for instance, we could do business with Russia, we could do business with anybody. It's one of the few truly sovereign countries which are there.
That is very true. We have a sort of independence, not just in terms of voice, but in terms of economics. Even the 2008 financial crisis did not hit us as bad as it hit the rest of the world.
Yeah.
There is a independence to India in that way that is very admirable, and I'm very bullish on that.
Right.
I'm very bullish on India overall because, I'm all of 28, sir.
Right.
10 years ago, when the largest sort of political shift is happening in the country from a predominantly Congress-led situation to a Prime Minister Modi-led situation, I'm only 18. I'm very young. I have no concept of things. But the last 10 years, I think, have largely been up. I can point to things that have not been up.
Sure.
Pollution's been poor.
Right.
Infrastructure is still suffering.
Right.
Education is still suffering.
Right.
You can look at human capital and still be like, we are pretty much behind.
Right.
But the gestalt, the sort of larger picture seems like we are going up.
Sure.
Is that my assumption from fabricated media stories, or is there data to back that up? Everything is online. So why are documents still being printed, sent, and signed offline? That's where Odoo's Sign app comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one management software that provides entrepreneurs with a range of applications to simplify the day-to-day management of their business, including invoicing, accounting, project management, inventory, and much more. With Odoo, you can send and sign and approve documents online, simplifying your workflow across all departments. With this app, you'll be able to collect signatures from others in seconds, review documents on any device, and even sign them yourself electronically, that too with just a few clicks. You can use the drag and drop feature to add dynamic fields with pre-filled data for the signer. These fields can be mandatory or optional. If you want to make a contract for multiple parties, you can also specify who can sign each field. Odoo also allows you to define the order of signing, where recipients are also notified when it is their turn to sign. Easily send signature requests and reminders to recipients and keep a track of progress of your contracts through your dashboard. Once sent, you can sign either with Odoo's automatic signature, draw it with a mouse or a finger, or upload a scanned copy. And the best part? It's all free. Yes, the first app on Odoo is free forever for an unlimited number of users with lifetime unlimited hosting and support. If you need more than one app, it's just Rs 580 to access everything else. Check out Odoo and its Sign app using the link in the pinned comment and description of this podcast.
No, of course there is data. For instance, see, when we do analysis, we should be careful about levels and changes. The question is, have levels improved dramatically? Answer is no. It takes time. Levels haven't changed. Levels, because our level was so bad. But has there been change, from low level to slightly, the point I'm saying, have we reached 30,000 per capita? No.
No.
But have we grown at sufficiently high rate? Answer is yes. We've grown at 7-8%. Not only that, the good thing, especially the Modi 1 era, we have saw a lot of fundamental issues. You will not believe 50% of the population did not have a bank account. Now, without a bank account, you started this issue of redistribution. How will you do any redistribution? Because if I have to stand in a line in front of a panchayat office and then grease the palms of that guy, imagine how many people were getting it. Any kind of government benefit. Now, including opposition parties, all parties have this cash transfer program. Right? How are they able to implement this cash transfer program? The answer is PMJDY, Prime Minister Jan Dhan Yojana. Modi ji called up bankers, said, I don't know how you do it, you open bank account for everyone. In fact, a lot of scholarly people ridiculed that scheme, saying, isse kya hoga? Matlab, aise bank account, savings account, zero balance rahega. When we do, people like us, when we criticize, we should also look back after some time, what did we say and what happened?
There should be accountability of opinion.
For us also,
yeah,
of course.
Right.
Why should there not be see, politicians, I have a lot of respect for all politicians. Whether I agree with them or not, at least they're accountable. They
lose. Yeah.
People like you who put money where your mouth is, you're accountable. Markets make you accountable.
Yeah.
Some of us who do analysis are not accountable at all. We can criticize PMJDY. This video I say something, 5 years from now this will be forgotten.
Yeah.
Then I will talk exactly the opposite of it.
Right.
A lot of us are living our lives like this.
Yeah.
So PMJDY, for instance, then RBI governor criticized it. It's on record.
And who was the governor then?
Dr. Rajan.
Dr. Rajan.
Right? Criticized not in a negative sense. They were all of the opinion, isse kya hoga? Jan Dhan, Aadhaar and mobile.
Right.
This is the big change,
Jan Dhan,
Aadhaar
and mobile. So Aadhaar security verifies ki we are talking to the same person as we are talking to.
Yes.
Mobile allows for technological use in this entire process, which we see.
Information and all of that.
And Jan Dhan allows for the banking part of it to be solved.
Yeah.
I'll just keep this here.
Aadhaar, And again, we should not be partisan. To be fair, the whole idea of Aadhaar and all of that came from the UPA government. The whole idea of Aadhaar was Pranav Mukherjee and that time, and
Right.
Nandan Nilekani, they set up the whole thing.
Right.
Even NPCI, at least the thought was there. It
Right.
was not that it was not there.
Hmm.
And they did a lot of work. But what changed after 2014 is a scale. You have an infrastructure, but how many people had Aadhaar cards before 2014? You can go and ask people, when did you get your Aadhaar? You'll find almost everyone that forcing the administration to do things, get things done within a deadline. That I saw was a major change in Modi 1. I studied this PMJDY carefully. I have been with, you will not believe, I was with bankers and I was going on the field. Every bank had to designate a senior level officer who every week had calls directly from the PMO. Senior officer in the PMO would ask this DGM, GM or whoever from a bank saying, so I was talking to a general manager in Federal Bank in Cochin, and suddenly she said, next 15 minutes we have to close. I have a very, very important. I asked her, what is this call? It's call from the PMO. This was 2014. PMO to a GM, and complete bypass of all kinds of rules and structures. CEMD has no clue. Every bank appointed this guy who has to drive this.
Right.
And they had targets worse than any other private organization you will have. That is how they sort of opened bank accounts.
Right.
They had to literally visit villages, go to people and get accounts opened. 2014, I think the big change that happened was, especially to the poor, is this, some of the very fundamental problems got solved. One is this bank account.
ठीक है.
The other one is access to toilets.
Right.
30 or 35 or 36% of the population had access to toilets in India. That is and I was born, when I was born, we did not have toilet at home. I could relate. Imagine the situation of women.
Right.
So now we are at 80-85%. And recently there is a paper in the Nature, which is a top science journal,
Yes.
which says that because of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, 60 to 70,000 lives have been saved.
So this open defecation problem was a public health concern or an economic concern in some way?
Everywhere, everything, right? Women's mobility gets restricted.
Right.
That way it's economic also and health also, obviously.
Right.
All kinds of issues. So
It's a domino of sorts.
and dropout rate from schools. Girls will drop out. 6th standard, 7th standard, girls dropout rate would dramatically increase if you don't have toilets. So this is a very big achievement that happened post 2014, even from a socio-economic point of view.
I'm realizing, sir, from this conversation with you, that there are a lot of these background changes that don't necessarily hit us with the same media force as some other changes.
Right.
That have, in your view, over Modi 1, really changed the nature of India's economy.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Modi 1, not much in Modi 2, I should tell you.
Oh, why? What happened in Modi 2?
These things reduced, the reforms got reduced.
Is it
Modi
because-
1 was about solving fundamental problems. I can't go on and go on and go on. Number of fundamental problems that got solved. Some of them did not work the way they thought. Fair enough. Demonetization, for instance. It might have had digitalization and all of that started. It didn't work the way they thought. That's okay.
That's fine.
Not everything should work. After the fact, everybody's intelligent and we criticize.
Yeah. Hindsight is always 20.
Always, that's fine. But it was about solving pre-existing, like 50 saal se jo pada hua problems. Swachhata ho, access to banking ho, this bank, access to credit, access to, bank accounts, all of this. This was, the 5 years was all about that.
Fair criticism. Tell me if you think,
Right.
it makes sense. I feel like, sir, मैं समझ गया स्वच्छता वाली बात हो गई, and I also understand toilets, right? There is a reality component to it too कि आप थ्योरी में जो पॉलिसी लाते हो और उसका जो लार्ज स्केल एग्जीक्यूशन होता है उसमें क्या गैप्स है और क्या लीकेजेस है, बिकॉज हमारा तो वो भी वी डील विद द करप्शन प्रॉब्लम ऑलमोस्ट एज एन इकोनॉमिक इशू.
Sure.
मैं स्वच्छता एंड क्लेनलीनेस वाले पैरामीटर पे आई फील लाइक वीव डिक्रीज्ड. इट कुड बी माई मायोपिक विजन ऑफ लिविंग इन दिल्ली NCR. But I feel like there weren't as many animals on the street. There wasn't as much plastic laying around as this maybe even 8-9 years ago. Do you think, is there a parameter you study for that? Because one of the concerns I have is, we were just talking about it earlier, your throat is itchy, pollution is about to hit, right?
Right.
There are standard of living problems जो अब सिर्फ marginal plus minus नहीं है. I think we have gone below threshold. And in some sense they're economic problems. So Punjab will say, देखो, we will burn stubbles because आपने पैडी के साथ MSP जोड़ रखा है. तो हम तो पैडी ग्रो करेंगे, पैडी ग्रो करेंगे तो हम स्टबल कहाँ डालें? आपने स्टबल के साथ associated costs भी डाल रखी है. तो burning is the most viable solution for a farmer in his economics.
Sure.
And then that clogs up Delhi NCR like it's nobody's business. We are living in 999 plus AQI, right? Like at that point, why are we even living here, right? So there are all these subsidiary problems.
Right.
And I'm wondering, as of 2024, 2025, how does that compare to overall economic health?
Sure. So this is not my area of expertise.
Sure.
So I'll give a very short answer.
Yeah.
You know, banking I can go on longer.
Forever, huh?
Yeah. So again, I agree with you. I'm not saying everything, hunky-dory and things have improved. One objective measure which has improved is access to toilets. You can actually go to houses in villages. You can actually go to schools. Toilets are functional. And the biggest proof is a recent paper that got published. You know, if 70,000 deaths, anecdotal, I'll give you anecdotal evidence. In UP, don't you remember that Japanese JE, that disease, when Yogi ji took over, first, within a month, there was so much controversy. 100 children died because of JE, Japanese encephalitis or some disease, right? Do you even hear about it now?
No.
It's gone. So a lot of problems have been solved. While others have become bigger, toilet is a very, very important access to, as I said, the ratio was something like 35-36%.
Right.
36% houses. Now if you have if 4 crore houses are getting constructed under PM Awas, they are coming with toilets. 4 crore houses have we have 20 crore families in India. So if 4 crore houses have gotten toilets, that itself is a big change. Has it translated into overall cleanliness outside in a visible manner? Maybe I also feel no.
Right.
But careful studies have established that toilets have made a difference. I can only say on that. Otherwise, I share your view. I am also seeing the same thing that you're seeing.
Right.
That
No, it's an unfightable sentiment.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I can't just, I can't be a spokesperson. I am not.
Sure, right.
Any spokesperson or
नहीं,
any
बिल्कुल भी
policy.
नहीं सर. मेरे को तो लगता है, in fact, no matter how devoted you are to any political party or ideology, these are things you cannot ignore. This
Of course,
is
you should not.
Yeah, it is right staring in front of us, and our kids' health are at
Yeah,
stake,
of course,
right?
of course.
But acha, can you give me an idea as to how much solid ground are we standing on in 2024 as Indians? Like, how solid is the economy?
Yeah, I think there are long-term, short-term, medium-term. You can look at broad fundamentals. We are solid. Broadly speaking. Why do I say we are solid? At a macro level. So take any parameter. Take our trade. We have current account deficit, which is 1.5%. We should have a deficit, by the way. A growing country should have a deficit.
Explain the deficit as in more imports than exports.
More imports than exports, which is good. We are importing machinery and all because we need to grow.
Yes.
We are not in a situation. See, current account surplus is you're sending savings somewhere. Why do we need to send savings elsewhere? We need money here.
Yes.
And which should be manageable. So external trade looks good. Forex reserve are like $700 billion. We were at 200, which is fine. Rupee is stable. Inflation is under control. Our banks are in very good health. Firms are in very good health. If you look at firms now, one of the consequences of IBC, I have a paper on that firms now started putting more of equity. Earlier, they had also become like banks. बैंक से पैसा लो, restructuring करो, खुद का कुछ नहीं डालो. अगर कुछ हुआ, डूब गया बैंक. Now they have put in their own capital. The firms, generally firms have more capital now. So their ability to withstand shocks have increased.
Firms as in businesses.
Businesses.
Economic term is firms.
Economic terms, that's a firm. Businesses have more capital.
Right.
So that way they are, in general.
And is India richer individually?
Individually, yes. In terms of what we were 10 years ago, we are definitely richer.
And where are we lacking, sir?
Yeah, lot of things.
Okay.
So there is. Does it mean, can it not be better? Of course it can be. In fact, I feel as I said, Modi too, I'm not as
bigger fan
or sometimes I'm a critic also. Is one of the things that while they solved access to savings, they have not been able to solve access to credit. Now, these two are very different. Access to savings is the person, the saver has to trust the bank.
Right.
That's easy. People trust the government banks.
Tick.
Right? Access to credit is reverse. The bank needs to trust the saver, the borrower. Right? Access to credit, you can't do this through a mudra kind of a scheme. You can't just force the banks to lend and you hope that it will lead to entrepreneurship and things like that.
Right.
You need a credit infrastructure. You need a solid credit infrastructure. You need ways to lend. You need more banks, banking competition, more smaller, the banks that we have, we are going in the reverse direction. We are making banks larger. Larger banks are very inefficient ways of financing small firms.
You need a lot of smaller banks.
You need US has thousands of banks.
Right.
You need smaller. See, the way small financing works is called relationship banking. It doesn't work on collateral. See, this collateral is and many people in RBI and others don't get this point. They think, आपने 100 रुपए का security रखा है, and I've given you 80 rupee loan, I'm safe. But they don't understand that when you default, that 100 rupee security will not sell at 100 rupees.
It will sell at 50 or 40.
40, you're not safe at all. Collateral does not, collateral, way should value. Collateral is in distress, what will be the value of that? Even land, if it's a large land, you won't be able to sell at this, small lands, multiplying this, whatever this area rate and with the acres of land, if the land is large, you won't be able to sell it. So access to credit requires relationship banking. Smaller kind of lenders should be able to understand the borrower and then lend based on cash flows. We need to promote cash flow based lending. That is the only way. In fact, by the way, I'm a very big fan of Raghuram Rajan as a researcher. We learn a lot. Unfortunately, people who both praise Rajan, criticize Rajan, don't read his papers.
They focus on the policy.
Policy and what he says in newspapers and all.
Right.
He has an amazing paper, which is very recent in the Journal of Finance. People should read it. What he shows is, as a country develops, it is cash flow, it is the proportion of secured lending goes down, not goes up.
Secured lending as
based on collateral.
It goes down. So
it goes down.
Borrow less by giving capital, by giving
you will
security.
be able to raise based on cash flows. In an ideal situation, some banker should be able to interview Prakhar, assess your ability, know you very well, and lend you. Based on your cash flows. Right? That is the contract bank should be able to do it. If you have a large monolithic bank like a SBI, they will not waste time on understanding, who you are, what is your business and all that. You need specialized smaller banks and ability to lend based on cash flows.
Business health. Cash flow is business health. Makes sense.
Business health, right? Now what we are doing, our lending is collateral based. Now and the RBI and even the government continuously, sort of discourage cash flow based lending. They increase capital requirement for, unsecured lending. On the one hand, we say we want fintech and all of that. The whole idea of fintech is what? Information. Looking at your GST, looking at your mobile, looking at all of that, I will understand your credibility. Now, but at the same time, if you penalize uncollateralized lending, then there is not going to be growth. So one of the areas where I've seen, I think we have come backwards, especially in the last 2-3 years, is this credit.
So we are not giving access to credit as well.
We are not giving access to credit.
Which is preventing entrepreneurship and risk taking in some way.
We are doing through government sponsored schemes. That is not the solution.
वो तो social welfare है.
वो तो bank account, it was a market failure. Complete market failure. हो नहीं रहा था. Modi ji forcibly did it. I will remain a fan of him forever just for that. Credit ऐसे नहीं होता. You can't tell the banker कि आपको इतना देना ही देना है दे दो. Then वो किसी को भी दे देगा. Then you will have another problem, I don't know what is happening in Mudra loan, bankers will find a way evergreen the loan, give you another loan.
Yeah,
फिर से target मिला, another loan.
So
that is not going to solve the problem.
Right.
Credit problem is, you should have the smaller lenders who should be able to assess your cash flows and should be able to lend to you. Okay. That infrastructure we are discouraging sadly. आप नहीं सुनते क्या? Yes, 2 days ago also there was an NBFC which was shut down. We are trying to shut down NBFCs. We are going, and government is also merging banks and making them larger. Right? So access to credit is my bigger complaint that I have. If we don't improve on that, we will not have growth. We will have monopolies.
What industries are doing well, or rather what sectors are doing well and what sectors are falling behind?
I think, generally financial service, so IT is a global
phenomena. Yeah.
Services are generally doing well. Larger firms are doing well. Those who have access to credit, those have their own internal funds, they are able to invest. Or those who can tap international markets. Because India's credibility has gone up, you will not believe. NTPC Green, yesterday I was talking to somebody, they have been able to raise funds abroad at 6%. After covering for currency, there is hedging, exchange risk you can hedge.
Right.
After that, I think they are able to raise at 6%. international market.
Which is very low.
Very low for India.
Right.
India is BB, triple B minus rated country.
Which means that the interest generally given is higher
Much
rates.
higher for India. So those companies, government companies have done phenomenally well because direct government, one thing I can watch, I have not got a single phone call from anyone to make a loan or not to make a loan from the government. I've spent 3 years now. So government companies' governance has improved. They have done well. Banks have done phenomenally well. Their health has improved. Larger formal firms have done well because generally there is policy certainty and all of that. Who is getting hurt is the smaller firms because they are the ones extremely small are fine, extremely poor, vulnerable because you have DBT, direct
You have
benefit
government
transfer,
schemes that help
government
you.
schemes now state governments are giving all kinds of extremely poor also have done well because you have this 5 kg rice going rice or wheat, the Prime Minister Garib Kalyan Yojana. So there is no way all these hungry and all indices are bogus, and you can go and there is no way Indians can be hungry. There is so much thing going on, but an entrepreneur, a new entrepreneur who has an idea, who doesn't have collateral, who doesn't have big BAP to back up, that guy to start a business, despite all the claims, that has not improved as much as one would have loved to. And one big problem is access to credit. They need access to credit, and Mudra is not a solution.
Mudra is not a solution.
It has to be a market-based solution.
Right.
You have to create credit infrastructure. Your regulations has to change.
Right.
You have to have bureaus. I'll give a simple example. Credit bureaus only capture information about those who have access to credit. You need to have a system where, it was announced in the budget. I was delighted. If you remember 2-3 years ago, Finance Minister announced in the budget that she's going to have an information bureau. The whole idea is to have information about informal setup so that banks can see that and assess your credit and give you loans. Right? So we need to move towards that. We need to create credit infrastructure. Like NPCI was such a beautiful thing for payments. That is done wonderful. I don't think I'm not an expert on that, but we all know how well we have done. But on credit, lot needs to be done.
I understand the situation with policy and with banking and how important that is, how central that is for the health. But purely from an economical standpoint, has the manufacturing industry gotten better? Is that something? I'll tell you why I'm asking. My guess is that we need a solid manufacturing base out of India.
Yes.
I feel like we are entering a war-fueled time. Smaller and bigger explosions are going up in the world. And I think we need manufacturing self-sufficiency, one, to guard us against the cost of war. And two, to even accelerate our growth because demand will increase if war happens. Right? But people will need more things. I think too, where we are lacking behind very sincerely is infrastructure, because if war ever comes to us, we want our roads between the eastern and the western and the northern and the southern flanks connected very well. That also has an economic benefit. If trucks travel faster, goods travel faster, cost of transfer of goods goes down. And my view is we are doing very well on this telephone sort of mobile internet era. But we are missing a huge chunk in the middle with manufacturing.
Right.
Is that the case in your data? Have you found that to be true?
No, generally, compared to before, manufacturing sector has grown. As a proportion of GDP, it has increased slightly.
Right.
They are also organized. Defense, for instance. You will see drone. This company raising some money. IIT Madras, some companies set up. These things were unheard of.
Right.
But they're also again smaller firms. Their health has not improved as much, especially post-COVID. Lot of smaller firms are yet to recover. Aggregate data masks lot of things. When we say aggregate improvement and all of that, there is some stress at the small firm level which needs to be addressed. Those fundamental reforms that were going on. Labor laws, for instance. There was a proposal. They have passed a law.
Right.
That is something that has a tremendous potential to increase employment. Shutting down a business is impossible in India if you follow the law. You need state government permission and all, beyond a point. No state government will ever give you permission if you are formal. You said, why don't we grow? Suppose you tell an entrepreneur that you invest, but you cannot shut down. Even if you lose money, you have to keep operating. Why will they put up all these manufacturing? And this problem is more for manufacturing.
Right.
Because all the labor unions and things is a problem. Services also, these rules apply, but professionals don't form unions and they don't go to court. So these IT firms are able to shut down, move and all that. Manufacturing, the big problem we have is labor laws. You can't shut down manufacturing. You can't fire people irrespective. So if you have that, what they're doing, they use contract labor. And
that's how it works.
That may not be efficient. You may need committed labor specialized to work in your organization.
You may need skilled labor.
But if you have to depend on contract labor, because the reason you use contract labor is if you take permanent labor, you can't fire them. And they have made a rule. They have introduced a fixed term contract where the laws have been passed, but they have not implemented. So manufacturing, yes, I agree with you. Whereas I don't have too much views about strategic issues that you're talking about.
Okay.
I don't want to talk about things that I don't understand.
Sure.
Right? I'm very narrowly focused on banking. Whatever you say, eventually I'll come to banking.
I love that.
Because that's the only thing I know.
Right.
So,
sir, why I'm asking is because I, as an entrepreneur, am betting on the India story.
Right.
We are all betting on the size of the pie to increase for us to have more pieces of the pie.
Right.
And India is also a hotly contested media affair. हमारे यहाँ तो बहुत पहले truth had died in media, right? Like as much as I'd like to believe what I see, as much as I'd like to believe my instinct that we can continue betting on India and India will, bring us returns, there's enough conversation about how that might not happen. There's conversation about growth in unemployment rates that we don't see and such.
Sure.
Right? There's conversation about the actual number of skilled labor in market or in the labor force in market, and the suggested numbers are very different because people are not really that skilled as, And so the larger macro concern I have is, am I expecting India to be on the up over the next 5 to 10 years? Like, can I relax and be like, Prakhar, don't worry about the macros, just focus on what you're doing and the country will take care of itself.
That's the whole goal of macro. In fact, when I teach also, I tell in class, the whole idea of macro policy is that Prakhar should be able to just focus on his podcast without bothering about these things.
Right.
That's the whole, that's the stability that we look. Yes and no. Yes, because in terms of stability, as I've told you, we are quite stable. I think 6 to 7% we will do for several years. I don't see that as a challenge. 6 to 7% is a phenomenally good growth number.
Yes.
So that, but then the counterfactual is, could we have done 9-10%? I don't see, unless we do reforms, we improve our efficiency of capital. Ultimately government investment alone cannot drive growth. It is a private sector that has to drive growth. And we have to improve efficiency of private sector and remove roadblocks. Unless our productivity improves, I don't see how we go to 9-10% on a sustainable basis. Of course, last year we got 8%. This year we will get 6.5%. There will be years we will do 8. There will be years we do 6. That will happen. So, in terms of, if it's a micro question, should a Prakhar worry about his business? My answer is absolutely not. Prakhar is in a great place despite all pollution, right? This is the this is the best place to be in.
Right.
And
in terms of the growth story, it's great.
6-7% is a good number.
Yeah.
But then in research, we always worry about counterfactual. What else can be? Given there is stable leadership, given there is a leadership with vision, which thinks about the country and larger interest, can we do better? For doing better, where my disagreement with the way government is working is government has to withdraw and not increase. And you've been educated in the US. One of the matrices that Milton Friedman has recommended for government is it's not the tax. What's the size of the government in the economy? Ease of doing business is reduce the size of the government in the economy. That had started happening in NDA1. If you look at our total government size, during UPA it was 15-16%. We came to like 12.5-13% during NDA1. Now we are back to 15%. So, government has to withdraw, reduce taxes, cut taxes, let the private sector do its job, and focus on reforms, focus on improving productivity of factors of production, focus on where are the bottlenecks. Labor is a bottleneck, solve. Pollution is a bottleneck, spend all your energy. It need not require money. Sometimes you will have to spend political capital.
Right.
Then you have a choice. Whether I'm not saying you have to spend. Tomorrow, Prakhar becomes Prime Minister and I become Finance Minister. Will we spend this political capital? We may not.
Right.
We may also, what's wrong? If a politician thinking about their survival, not thinking about long-term contested, what's wrong? That's fair enough. I'm only saying if you have this 9-10% growth, then the approach should be like, what is the problem? How do I solve it? What is the current
I completely
problem?
agree.
And where is the role? And the question is, can the private sector solve it or the government can solve it? Now, if bank account is a problem, it is the government solving it is the right answer.
Right.
If access to credit is a problem, yes, government can solve it by creating credit infrastructure. RBI can solve it by making credit easy, not difficult. You have to be ready. Of course, NPAs will go up. See, we were at one stage, think about it. This is the same country. 10 years ago, we said, look, you go ahead and restructure. बाद में देखा जाएगा. This is where we were.
Right.
From now we are saying we can't lend anybody loan. You can't grow. If an NBFC grows beyond a point, then I'll shut you down. And we are doing all of that.
तो वही जो opposite problem है.
We are seeing growth in unsecured loan of 30%.
Right.
We had restructuring growth of 50%. Then we ignored. Now we are, when you have more information, when you have GST, when you have data, when you have fintech, unsecured loan ही होगा. इस whole fintech का मतलब है unsecured loan.
क्योंकि information is covering up for the collateral.
That's the collateral.
Yeah.
See, collateral is not safe. If I can, I feel like if I can take a class to someone, so it's regulators, policymakers, collateral will save lender's job. जो लोन ऑफिसर दे रहा है ना, उसका जॉब बचाएगा, क्योंकि मैंने कोलैटरल लिया है. बैंक को पैसा आएगा नहीं आएगा, 40% ही आता है. एनसीएलटी में जो होता है ना, रिकवरी रेट क्या है? 40% है. कोलैटरल नहीं था क्या? कोलैटरल था. दीज आर सिक्योर्ड लोन्स. फिर 40% क्यों मिल रहा है? तो आरबीआई समहाउ थिंक्स कोलैटरल है तो सेफ है, अनकोलैटरल इज ऑल रिस्की. इट्स नॉट ट्रू. इफ इट इज बेस्ड ऑन इन्फॉर्मेशन एंड इफ समबडी, इवन द एंटरप्रेन्योर वांट्स टू ग्रो and the banker wants to also maintain information, then it's not that unsafe. होगा. Of course it will have a higher, होने दो. मतलब 2% की जगह 3% भी हो गया default rate. It is a cost in a growing setup. ये सब होता है. So we have come from one extreme to another extreme. I'm sorry, I'm only talking as if credit is the only problem. ये नहीं है.
No, but it is a large problem.
It's a large problem which I understand.
Right.
Of course, I may disappoint your viewers.
No, sir. It is a
I don't want to talk about problems I don't understand.
It is a large problem that even I understand, because credit in some sense is a country's entrepreneurial lifeblood.
Right.
आपके पास कितना credit का access है, किस rate पे है, कितना stably है, determines how much entrepreneurship will happen. Entrepreneurship will create jobs. Jobs will bring money down to the bottom. The trickle down works like this, and it's like the blood to the system, right?
Right.
And I think what you're suggesting is that is a hole you found that is unfulfilled. Like वहाँ पे जो reforms होने चाहिए वो नहीं होते हैं.
उल्टा जा रहा है. Reform नहीं होती, छोड़िए. We are restricting unsecured lending.
We are restricting it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I often do this puzzle in my head where I'm like, if I were allowed to change one thing that would cause a domino of effects towards the largest good in the country, what would that be? And I've often thought that one thing is judicial backlog clear करने का system.
Sure.
If you're able to have law and order sorted, then there will not be so many defections from law and order. There will not be so many trust issues, and with trust issues, credits will, all those things start to happen.
Yes.
Right now, a court case has to last 8 years. At that point, there is no punishment. There is no disincentive or incentive to behave properly.
Absolutely.
And what I'm also understanding, you said something very profound about you don't always have to spend money to solve a problem as far as the government is concerned. Sometimes it's political capital.
Right.
Which is that sometimes you have to make decisions that might hurt your political career but might be best for the nation.
Right.
And I also understand that there is a need to reduce the size of government for private players to emerge.
Right.
I think this was common knowledge when I was in school. I don't know how true it is now, that all PSUs are destined to perform poorly except maybe one or two.
Yes.
That public sector undertakings that are run by government, and it could be a skin in the game problem.
Right.
That they have no incentive, the management has no incentive, they will never be fired,
Sure.
they will just be transferred.
Sure.
So there is a lot of these sort of underlying issues. There is infrastructure and education that I insist on consistently, that without proper infrastructure, you cannot have global capital coming here.
Right.
And you cannot have global talent sitting here.
Right.
With proper education, you're not producing that talent.
Right.
And so we do have a spread of problems in front of us.
Right.
But what I also understand from what you're telling me is that we are very much, or we are significantly better off than we could have been or have been.
Of course.
Right.
We are definitely significantly better off.
Right.
Some of them we have made progress.
Right.
But things can be better.
Right.
Yeah.
Tell me about the middle class, or how is the middle class? Is it fair to say the middle class has expanded?
Yes, of course.
Could you also say that the self-recognition, the sort of problem of self-identifying as middle class has led to a lot of upper middle class and lower middle class people also including themselves in the middle class? So we just have an expanded middle
Everybody
class. Everybody's middle class.
I've seen faculty at ISB, my colleagues, who must be, we are at whatever 99.99 whatever percentile. We also say we're middle class.
I think
because
the
we compare
value-
ourselves to those very rich people.
No, I think the dominant Indian values, no matter how much money you have, are middle class.
Yeah.
Right? Like you grow up feeling middle class, even though you may not be middle class in that technical
Right.
sense. Oh, how do you define a middle class?
There is no standard definition.
Right.
You can define whatever you can define based on income, you can based on assets, you can have any kind of definition. It has to be in the middle, median, somewhere in the median.
Right.
Right? But median in India is very, very low.
Yeah.
None of us are middle class.
Yeah.
None of us.
Any listener who's followed us up until is probably not middle class.
Not middle class.
Right.
Not in that sense.
Not in that sense.
Not in a strict median sense.
Right.
But I get it. Here, other than filthy rich, everybody claims they are middle class.
And even the filthy rich do that.
yeah. And what's the definition of filthy rich?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But right, please.
Yeah. I think people have benefited. That of course this class is vocal, and why not? But things have, as I said, FDI reforms, in jobs coming in, investments, all of them directly, infrastructure you said. Biggest beneficiary of infrastructure. A lot of poor people will say, what do I do with infrastructure?
Right.
The biggest beneficiary of infrastructure is this class, which is upper middle, let's say.
Right.
So their lives have improved.
Right.
Of course, they taxes, for instance.
Right.
Taxes, you have to, anywhere in the world you have this much of tax.
Right.
Other than, Middle East where they work on oil.
Right.
I don't think generally taxes are exorbitant. There are items where they are exorbitant.
Right.
So I think things can improve. As I've said, they are leading a decent, comfortable life.
I think with taxation, sir, probably the rate of taxation is not that big a problem, but the complication of the code, how complex the entire system is.
Yes.
And I grew up pretty much on the Income Tax Act because that's the
Yeah,
dominant
yeah,
discussion in my family, right?
Yeah.
So I understand it very well,
Yeah.
and I'm trained to be a company secretary. I never finished my chartered accountant, so I know.
Yeah.
And I think that complication of the tax code is such a burden, not just on the individual, but on the institution, the government as well, because it produces so many ways for me to move around.
Sure.
I feel like every financial, the budget, every year we spend 25% of our budget resources in solving the problems we created last year with the tax code, right? And I think that might be...
No, that is why government size, right? Government size matters. Now, if you keep a large government size, if you keep a budget of 48 lakh crore, next year you will see in the budget, the finance minister proudly saying we have crossed 50 lakh crore and all. I think it's not I remember Pranab Mukherjee saying 10 lakh crore we have reached in 2011 or something when he was presenting the budget. Now the problem is, if you have a large budget, you have targets. You give taxmen the target. Once you give taxmen the target, you will have these, you need to create all these complications where they can interpret the way they want and go behind the taxpayer.
Right.
In a simple thing, you won't be able to do this. So the solution is you have to prioritize. See, you can't do, it's easy to, as an economist, to talk about these things. I know it's very hard for a policymaker because we can say spend political capital, which means you lose the election.
Yeah, right.
Right. A very sophisticated way of saying is political capital. What do you mean?
Career.
Career
That's what it means, yes.
Who will do? Will I do? Will you do?
Right.
It's a difficult thing to do. But then, if you don't do it long term, it will hurt, even politically also. So the problem is simpler. Why they cannot do simpler taxation is, if you keep your budget targets very high, then you have to collect. And you need these complicated laws if you have to collect. So that is why it's a chicken and egg problem. You have to prioritize. I'm not going to spend this much, even in infrastructure. Not every infrastructure is productive. I've said it many places. There is no careful research, which, there is no consensus on whether infrastructure has so much multiplier as it is claimed. A metro in a city is definitely productive. 100%.
Yes.
It will solve a problem and you can see it, right? Whereas in an airport in a village is not. I come from Karnataka. We used to have two airports, Bangalore and Mangalore, for a very long time. I think even today the need is only for these two. But now we have, I think, 8 or 10 airports. Every district has an airport. Now there's one flight going from there. Now you can argue that 50 years from now there will be investment coming. But you're deploying resources for, people don't realize this. When government spends, they have taxed it from some Prakhar. Now that has created a deadweight loss. The taxation is a deadweight loss because your production with taxation, your production without taxation is different. See, any business, there is a price and there is a cost.
Right.
You stop where the price is equal to cost.
Right.
what tax does, it increases your cost. That means you will stop much earlier than what you would have stopped.
ठीक है.
So your revenue
It's
is a
increased my
falling
cost.
function.
Right,
As
right.
you increase product, your revenue falls. Your cost goes up. And now without taxation, you will go even more.
Right.
With taxation, you will stop here. There is this triangle that you would have seen. Cost.
Yeah.
So when a finance minister collects money, we have these people celebrating GST beyond a point. You don't realize that you collect more of those, you're causing deadweight cost to the economy. Private sector's production, you're reducing. Now when you spend, you better make sure that additional spending you're doing is more than this deadweight cost. Then it makes sense.
Right.
Metro, I can see. Surely it's more than that. I can see very clearly.
100%.
I don't, I have no problem with that. Expanding Delhi airport, I can see. 100%. There is capacity constraint. But an airport in a village, Vande Bharat, I don't see. Vande Bharat between my village, I'm from Udupi, to Goa, which is 4.5 hours. And you charge like 2,000, 3,000 rupees. I can drive down. The road is very good. I don't see it as a solving any problem. Infrastructure that solves a problem is very, very good. Infrastructure which does not. So I see a lot of these expenditure which is not problem solving in nature. What they miss is what people miss, which those who suggest the government also, where is this funding coming from? It's coming through taxes. Now that tax has already created a deadweight loss. Private sector's productivity to that extent has already gone down. Now if you don't generate equivalent, you are harming the economy.
Right. आपने net loss create किया.
हाँ, तो इसके बारे में सोचते ही नहीं. जो 1 रुपए आप ले रहे हो, एक रुपए का ना, I think I have to say this carefully to your viewers. If I take 1 rupee from you, if it comes to 1 rupee for me, as an economist, no, we don't care. We don't, as a ruthless people, if I say that we don't care, of course, some of us do care, but we're not worried so much about, we don't call it a social loss. आपसे मैंने 1 रुपए लिया, मुझे 1 रुपए मिला. Then there's no social loss, right? Distributionally, there is a problem. But tax में क्या होता है? When I take 1 rupee from you, I reduce your production also. That is a loss. अगर if I don't take that 1 rupee from you, you would produce
2.5 rupees
extra.
Right.
वो मैं ले लिया. Now I have to generate. I better generate that.
For the total economy.
Yeah, if I generate that, it's good.
Right.
In fact, in a metro, I may be generating 5.
Right.
That is good.
Yeah.
But in a airport in some remote area, I am not. If there is a strategy consideration, I get it. That's a different thing. Like you were mentioning, Leh Ladakh में चाहिए होगा.
Right.
I have no one to comment.
Right.
Then it's not just economic, but this is not. Some of the even infrastructure. What is happening is we should not go by percentage allocation. It should be bottom up. Are we solving a problem?
Right.
If you're solving a problem, करो expenditure. मतलब then I would say expand government. अगर आपके पास problem, if you can
identify the problem.
Identify a problem, do a thought experiment. खुद ही बात कर लो सरकार में कि ये problem है, इसको अगर इसमें हम 100 करोड़ डालेंगे तो 200 करोड़ का फायदा है. Then tax the hell out of people. I don't have a problem.
Because you're generally adding to the economics.
Generally adding to the economy. It'll come back.
Right.
But अगर आप इसलिए कर रहे हो कि कोई टारगेट है, कोई नंबर है, आई हैव टू मीट 4% ऑफ द बजट, कैपेक्स होना चाहिए, हमारा एनालिसिस बहुत लेजी हो चुका है. आप किसी इकोनॉमिस्ट को बुलाइए जो दे एडवाइज द गवर्नमेंट, फर्स्ट थिंग दे विल टेल यू क्वालिटी ऑफ एक्सपेंडिचर इज गॉन अप. एंड हाउ डू यू डिफाइन क्वालिटी ऑफ एक्सपेंडिचर? कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर गॉन अप. नाउ just because you label something as capital expenditure does not make it more productive.
Doesn't make it more qualitative.
Just because something is a social expenditure doesn't make it less productive. The saving of 70,000 lives, which Nature's article saying Swachh Bharat, you call it unproductive.
Because that's
not
capex.
Accounting, it's unproductive.
Right.
How is it unproductive?
Right.
The houses you're building, PM Awas, look, accounting is so bad. PM Awas is under welfare expenditure. You're building houses.
Which is infrastructure.
Right. Or not. So we have to be careful. That's my second grouse, is that accounting way of looking at what is more productive or what is not productive, then a realistic problem solving way.
Right.
That is, these are solvable problems. I remain optimistic to go to 9-10%, because that was, this is a problem calling a professor.
Right.
Your question started with something else, I went somewhere else.
That is what I enjoy about my job, sir.
But let me try to relate to the question. This is what I do when students ask question. I give whatever answer that I want, and finally I realize I'm talking something totally different than what the student has asked. Then the student will feel bad, so I have to tell the student that no, I'm answering your question.
In which case, sir, professors fit brilliantly in podcasting because we ask stupid questions and we expect very smart responses. So it works out.
So connecting to if I have to relate it to what do we need to do for 9-10%. I can tell you two things. Of course, these are not the only two things. These are two things I understand. One thing that I understand very well is access to credit. Improve access to credit, build credit infrastructure, promote cash flow based lending, have smaller lenders, not larger lenders. Don't discourage NBFCs, encourage NBFCs. Thoda bahut default hoga, hone do. If they have to rescue, we have done far worse than before. We have seen all of that. That is one. The other side is scale down government, reduce government size. Don't have your target should be government expenditure as a percentage of GDP, not debt, not fiscal deficit. It's a very clear, the only number in my view in the budget, this year they said we will move from fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is, revenue minus expenditure.
Revenue minus expenditure.
Right, how much they spend and how much they earn of the government. Receipts minus expenditure, not necessarily revenue.
Right.
All kinds of receipts minus expenditure.
Theek.
Now that is government's target. This year they said, no, we will target debt. No, debt itself is not bad. As I've told you, if you have enough growth, why not?
Yeah.
Borrow debt.
Right.
The target should be that what is the role of government in the economy? Can you minimize it and focus on solving problems? Last 2-3 years post-COVID, COVID it was the right thing to do. Again, we have to be careful. Same thing works well during
crisis.
During COVID, crisis, government has to step in. And they will step in and fine. But post-COVID, that has remained. While they have reduced deficit, their focus. This is what Milton Friedman warned. These guys are. You should see a video. You should play this video. It's available on YouTube. That he said, Republicans have this problem. Republicans focus on deficits.
Right.
Deficit क्या है कि your spending is more than expenditure, तो more than income. तो इसको कम करना है. कैसे कम करोगे? So spending you can't reduce. Then you collect more taxes. So if you collect more taxes, then your deadweight cost.
Yeah.
You're creating deadweight cost. Why can't reduce expenditure? The focus should be on reducing expenditure. So what has happened in the post-COVID, in the last 3 budgets, we have reduced fiscal deficit by increasing taxes. Increasing tax collection as a person. See, I know people may say we have not increased tax rates. मुझे tax rate से कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. आप economy से कितना ले रहे हो? Come tax rate low, whatever. What matters for deadweight cost is how much you're sucking from the economy.
From the economy. So tax collection
is what matters.
Haan.
Tax collection बढ़ा है. Tax collection बढ़ा है. That means you have cost more deadweight cost to the economy. Right. So now you better justify. Of course, if you can justify that all these projects where you're investing in are productive, I don't see some of them as productive. I see some of them as productive. Of course, suburban rail in Bangalore. Even in villages, good village road is good. It's necessary. School in a village is necessary. Health problems, you open a health clinic is necessary. But are all highways necessary? When already one highway is going on, just expand, stop and do. You also know many of those which have not solved any problem. Right? Maybe you can do it few years later. What people who appreciate it also don't realize it is coming at the expense of this deadweight loss. So we are we are increasing tax collection and claiming it as a victory because it reduces fiscal deficit. So I am okay. You have complete fiscal deficit. Borrow, only borrow, don't tax at all. But spend on productive purpose. Nothing wrong with that. Because productive by definition will generate. So we should come out of this, especially, median age is yours. People, country which median person is like you, should not be fearful of borrowing.
Right.
If it is for productive.
Right.
You should fear for borrowing if you borrow and eat.
Right.
That's...
If you borrow and invest into a business, then you should not be
genuine
afraid.
Good business.
Yeah, right.
So I think these approach should change, in my view. They should go back to what they were doing in Modi 1. Solve problems, identify problems, go back to reforms. I think we will then go to 9%. Otherwise also, I think they are a decent government. We will still do 7%. I tell in my class, the way we are in India, bad government will bring us to 4-5%. Decent government will keep us at 6-7%. We need a very good long-term oriented government to go to 9%. So they have the potential, I think they understand hopefully. And they should focus on solving problems.
Sir, do you have any questions or suggestions for me?
in the sense, this is a part of the podcast?
Yeah, sir. Just generally, I let, if I ask so many questions, I let the other person ask a question in case
Oh
they
my
have
God,
something.
okay. No. Okay, so I did not come prepared for this.
I keep you very unprepared, sir. I keep all my guests
By the way,
unprepared.
I should tell your viewers that we were supposed to have ready-made questions 1 week ago.
Right.
and I think I thought I will give you that as a suggestion. That please give some clue as to what question you're going to ask. Now I feel that's you should not do it.
No, sir.
You know,
I enjoy it so much more.
This is a good thing.
Thank you.
You know, in fact, you should not give any list of questions.
Cancel all lists.
I think then the problem with list is you come prepared and you won't speak naturally.
Yeah.
You know, I felt like I'm, of course, I can relate to a class because that's what I do.
Right.
It felt like a class and it was so free flowing.
Right.
And it's a good thing.
Right.
I think it's, what do I say? Maybe
I'll add a little bit to that, sir.
Yeah.
I sit down with like a list, right? I have a list, but I use none of it. Like I'll use it in case something, because my formula is, I'm going with the most natural question that comes out of what you said.
Yes.
And the funny thing is, since I've started doing it, I've found that everything I write down gets covered quite organically itself.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, the beauty is when you get excited.
Yeah.
Right. Like when the guest, you were talking about credit systems and banking, health and so on. And how rare is that for me as an individual sitting here? Right. To be, now I have a very decent understanding of the banking system and the problems that are hidden behind what we don't see. So yeah, I enjoy it better like this too, where I do not give people any hints of what I'm going to do. But thank you so much, sir, for your time. I hope you're back whenever you're in Delhi, sir. I'd love to have you here and chat more.
Yeah, I want to talk, in fact, I should tell you.
Right.
I'm not at all disappointed.
Thank you.
I'm happy. I'm actually happy. But I actually sent him an abstract. All of us want to showcase what we have done.
Right.
So I sent him an abstract of all my papers. I thought because he's saying he'll be prepared, it will be on papers. But I want to talk to you one day, not about my papers. One of the things that is lacking in India, in finance especially, serious academic research. You come from, you
I have some understanding
in
of
Columbia. The professors you're talking to are those, what they've done is there in textbooks. That's the kind of professors that you have interacted with.
Yes.
Right? What they're figuring out will come in textbook 5 years from now.
Right.
That is what becomes curriculum. For that, you need solid researchers, who just sit down and focus on academic research.
Right.
I'm not saying that's the only thing. There needs to be some people. That does not exist at all. One of my major people ask me, what is your goal? You want this position, that position, sometimes comes, sometimes goes. One of my goal is I want to show is sitting here in India. All my education has been in India. All my work has been in India. You can publish in the same type of journals that your professors in those universities publish. That is some beauty of ISB.
Right.
Beauty of ISB is we publish in the same journals that a top quality researcher in the US publishes. That ecosystem, we should, if at all we get to speak once again, relevance of that, how can feed into policy. I can give an illustration, a non-rigorous way of studying certain problem and a rigorous way of studying certain problem can lead to a very different conclusion. If you have 3 minutes, I can give you something prepared.
Please, sir.
I did not get an opportunity to speak even one sentence of prepared stuff.
Sir, you're belting me. I'm now turning out to be a bad student.
No, I said it's a good thing.
Right.
It's a good thing because the prepared things will never come this naturally. My voice is gone today. Despite that, I've been able to speak with so much passion because the way you question, you feel like somebody genuinely wants to listen. But one of the things I had prepared, I should tell you, and we can end with this, policy evaluation. A simple example is government launched this emergency credit guarantee scheme during COVID. If you are a small firm with less than 50 crore outstanding, you get 20% extra loan. Manlo, you have 40 crore, you get 4 crore loan from banks. And that loan is guaranteed by the government. Right? Now, government wants to study what did that loan do? How did it make any difference and all of that? Now, how do you study? Now, I see policy evaluation, people doing, and unfortunately, and I don't want to bitch about people, then most people who claim as economists, finance researchers, they have not done any, you go to their CVs, there is an objective way. the Financial Times has list of 50 top journals globally for management. This has finance, economics and all of that. And you see most of these people who claim as economists, how many in those journals, they will not have a single publication. Single. Whereas in your Colombia, there are people with 50, 100.
Yeah, sir. I was studying with Joseph Stiglitz at a certain point.
That is an outlier.
Right.
Joseph Stiglitz, you live it.
Yeah, but that's what you're exposed to.
Joseph Stiglitz is extreme. I'm talking about normal assistant professor.
Right.
Who's teaching your normal econ.
Right. I follow what you
I'm
mean.
talking about that.
Right.
Now, these people have produced a report. What they did was, they looked at those who took this loan, those who did not take this loan. They compared and they said this, whatever conclusion they reached. Now, this is a fundamental error. You can't choose a treatment and control based on the choice exercised by the subject. You can't, you have to randomize.
You have to have a natural control.
Natural control, natural treatment.
Yes,
Ideally, it's a RCT.
Right.
You do a randomized control. Aapko do, usko mat do, then dekho. So this, you chose to take this loan. He refused to take this loan. Must be there are 10,000 other reasons you are different.
They're invisible factors now, right?
We don't know.
They're confounds, right?
Your sensitivity to COVID may be different.
Yes.
The guy who has taken the loan must be more sensitive to COVID or less sensitive to COVID.
Right.
So the ideal test, if it is given to me, an academic researcher, I would have said, look, you have a 50 crore cutoff. This 50 crore cutoff, the beauty of this experiment was 50 crore as of February. COVID kab aaya? March mein. Nobody knew that 50 crore is going to be a cutoff in March. मार्च में अनाउंस किया कि इन फरवरी, सिटिंग इन फरवरी, आपको पता नहीं था कि 50 करोड़ बिकम्स, सपोज यू वांटेड टू बोरो 50 करोड़ 1 रुपी, क्यों करोगे आप? आपको पता नहीं इसका वैल्यू क्या है. वैल्यू हो गया मार्च में. सो यू हैव एन आइडियल नेचुरल एक्सपेरिमेंट. कंपेयर दोज एट 49 करोड़ and 51 crore.
As of February. Right.
Because sitting in February, they had no clue that this is going to be important.
Yeah.
Right? Very close. Now test what has happened to these guys. These guys got it. These guys did not get it. They are otherwise similar. Right? Any serious researcher will tell them this is how you evaluate this.
Right.
So we need more people who do serious research to think about these things. That is one of the biggest, at least economic policy making that is lacking in India. So I would love to talk to you one day about more such things, specifics, not big picture,
Right.
Today we spoke about big picture, but there are these minute, micro, small things. What should be the design of Ayushman Bharat? What should be the design of this program? I said so many things about improvement of credit. What do I mean by improving credit? It's easy to say improve credit, but somebody can question, what do you mean? Is it just banks? So I hope to talk to you one day on these kind of things.
Sir, most definitely. This is almost a character introduction for you as far as my audience is concerned, right? They'll get exposed to you, and then from there we can probably touch upon smaller things. I do agree, India is not a serious research nation at all. I think we have smart people. It is evidenced by the fact that so many of us end up becoming professors at these top universities around the world. But as far as the infrastructure to have that research be conducted here, for me to find an original science researcher is effort. And it is distinctly the opposite in the environment I come from in my higher education, where pretty much everybody is published in something or the other. They're the front runners.
Yes.
And in that way, our academic corpus is fairly behind.
Yes.
And at a certain point, I think as a function of GDP per capita, as a function of overall educational investment, we will get to that place. ISB is a great example of some of the outliers we have. But that would be an interesting conversation.
Sure.
And I'm hoping to remedy that sitting from across this microphone also. So we'll find out what we can do.
Sure.
But thank you so much for your
Thank
time,
you.
sir. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks.